Jake Morrison walked down the long hallway one last time. His shoes made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor of the council station. Behind him, two young diplomats carried boxes filled with human files and documents. The hallway felt empty. Now, almost sad, for 12 years, Jake had been Earth's main voice in the Galactic Council. He had sat in those big chairs, argued with aliens who thought they knew better, and tried to make the galaxy a safer place for everyone. Now it was over. The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and looked around. At the familiar curved walls and floating platforms where each species had their seats, the room was full today. Every major alien race had sent their best people to watch the humans leave. On the highest platform sat Zexthara, the leader of the Zilithians. Her blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights. She had always looked down on humans, literally and figuratively. Next to her was Ambassador Vorthak from the Vorthan Empire. His red eyes never showed any emotion, but Jake knew he was happy about today. The oldest member was Kethmore, representing the ancient Kethmoran people. He had been alive for over 300 years and thought humans were just children playing at being adults. His gray, wrinkled face showed no interest in the proceedings. Jake walked to the center of the chamber. The human section looked strange now, with most of the seats empty. Only a few humans remained, including Captain Lisa Barnes, who commanded the Human Defense Fleet. She sat straight in her uniform, her face hard as stone. "The chair recognizes Ambassador Morrison of Earth," Zexthara said. Her voice echoed in the chamber. "You may deliver your final statement." Jake cleared his throat and began to speak. "For 12 years, humanity has been a member of this council. We came here hoping to work together, to build something better for all the species in this galaxy. We offered our friendship, our help, and our protection to those who needed it." He paused and looked around the room. Most of the aliens were staring at him with blank expressions. Some looked bored. A few seemed happy. "We tried to speak for the small nations that had no voice here. We tried to protect the weak from the strong. We asked you to help us stop pirates who attacked innocent traders. We begged you to send aid to planets hit by disasters. We wanted to work together to solve problems that affected everyone." Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. "But every time we brought up these issues, you told us to mind our own business. When we asked for help protecting trade routes, you said it was not the Council's problem. When we wanted to send medical supplies to sick planets, you said they should solve their own problems. When we tried to stop wars between smaller species, you said it was natural selection." Ambassador Vorthak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The humans always want to play hero," he said to the alien sitting next to him. "They think they can save everyone." Jake heard the comment but kept talking. "You called us interfering. You said we were too emotional, too caring, too willing to help others. You voted against almost every proposal we made. You treated us like we were children who did not understand how the galaxy really worked." The chamber was quiet except for the soft humming of the air systems. Jake could feel the weight of history in this moment. Everything they had worked for was ending. "Well, you got your wish," Jake said, his voice calm but firm. "Humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. We are taking our ships, our people, and our resources back to Earth space. We will not interfere in galactic politics anymore. We will not offer our protection to trade routes. We will not send aid to disaster zones. We will not try to stop wars or help refugees." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. "This contains the formal resignation of the United Earth Government from the Galactic Council. It also includes a list of all the humanitarian missions we are immediately stopping, all the protection services we are ending, and all the research projects we are canceling." Jake placed the device on the center table. It made a small beeping sound as it activated. "You wanted us gone," he continued. "Now you have it. But do not come crying to us when things start to fall apart. Do not ask for our help when the pirates attack your trade ships. Do not beg us to send medical teams when plagues spread. Do not expect us to care when the strong start crushing the weak." Captain Lisa Barnes stood up from her seat. Her voice was clear and strong. I want to make one thing very clear to everyone in this chamber. The human fleet is leaving Council space immediately. We are pulling our patrol ships from the Rigelian trade routes. We are ending our protection of the Altarian colonies. We are stopping our medical missions to the Outer Rim. She looked directly at Zextara. When you realize what you have lost, when chaos spreads across the galaxy, remember that you chose this. You could have worked with us. You could have valued our friendship. Instead, you pushed us away. Zextara stood up on her platform. Her blue face showed no emotion. The Council accepts Earth's resignation. We are sure we can handle any problems that arise. The galaxy survived for millions of years before humans arrived. It will survive just fine without you. Other aliens nodded and made sounds of agreement. Ambassador Vorthak smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Good riddance, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Now we can focus on important matters without human interference. Jake looked around the chamber one last time. He saw the faces of aliens who thought they were better than humans. He saw the empty seats where representatives of smaller species should have been sitting, species that humans had tried to protect and speak for. History will judge who was right, Jake said quietly. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Captain Barnes and the other humans followed him. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber. As they reached the doors, Jake heard the sound of celebration behind them. The aliens were already talking about how much better things would be without human interference outside the chamber. Jake stopped and looked back one last time. They have no idea what they just did, he said to Lisa. They will learn, she replied. The hard way. Within hours, the human ships were leaving Council space. The galaxy was about to discover what it really meant to be alone. Admiral Chris Taylor stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship UES Guardian, watching the stars move past the viewing window. Just 6 hours ago, he had been patrolling the Rigelian trade routes with his fleet. Now he was leading the human ships away from Council space, following orders to return to Earth. Admiral, called Lieutenant Tony Martinez from the communications station. We're getting emergency signals from the Rigelian sector. Multiple ships under attack. Chris walked over to the communication console. The screen showed dozens of red dots moving through space. Each dot was a merchant ship calling for help. How many pirate groups? He asked. At least 15 different raider fleets, sir, Tony replied. They hit the trade routes just 2 hours after we left. It's like they were waiting for us to go. Chris felt a heavy weight in his stomach. The Rigelian trade routes carried food, medicine, and supplies to over 30 different worlds. Without protection, millions of people would suffer. But his orders were clear: no more interference in galactic affairs. Can we help them? Asked Commander Betty Walsh, his second in command. Our orders are to return to Earth space immediately, Chris said, his voice tight with anger. We are not to engage in any Council territory operations. On the main screen, they could see the emergency messages flooding in. Ship captains begged for help in dozens of different languages. Some were crying. Others were screaming as pirates boarded their vessels. This is Captain Moore of the cargo ship Silver Star, came a voice over the radio. We are carrying medical supplies to the Tau. SETI colonies, pirates have damaged our engines. We cannot escape. Please, anyone who can hear this, help us. Chris closed his eyes. He had protected these routes for 8 years. He knew many of the merchant captains by name. They were good people just trying to make a living and help their families. Sir, Tony said quietly, the Silver Star just went silent. Meanwhile, on the Council station, Director Amy Foster sat in her small office watching the news feeds. Amy had been Earth's intelligence chief for the Council territories. She had spent years building networks of information sources across the galaxy. Now she was packing her files and preparing to leave. Her computer screen showed reports from all over the galaxy. The Rigelian attacks were just the beginning. 3 different pirate groups had launched major operations in the last 4 hours. The Vorthan Empire had moved warships to the borders of 2 smaller nations. The Kethmoran had stopped responding to emergency calls from their protectorates. Ma'am, said her assistant, a young man named Gary Collins. "The Altarian ambassador is here to see you." Amy looked up as Ambassador Felthar entered her office. The Altarian was tall and thin, with large, gentle eyes. His people were known for their peaceful nature and their beautiful art. They had always been close allies of humanity. "Director Foster," Felthar said, his voice shaking, "is it true?" "Are the humans really leaving?" Amy nodded sadly. "I'm afraid. So, we're pulling out of all council operations immediately." Felthar's face went pale. "But who will protect the trade routes? Who will help us if the Vorthan Empire attacks our colonies? Your people have been our guardians for so long." "I'm sorry," Amy said. "The council made it clear they didn't want our help. They said the galaxy could handle its own problems." "The council members have their own strong military forces," Felthar said desperately. "But what about species like mine? What about the Centauri merchants? The Tausetians? We depended on human protection?" Amy felt tears forming in her eyes. "I know, I tried to warn them this would happen, but they wouldn't listen." On the other side of the station, in the main council chamber, Zexthara was meeting with her advisors. The Zilithian leader looked pleased with herself as she reviewed reports from across the galaxy. "The human ships have left council space," reported her military advisor. "All their patrol vessels have been withdrawn from the trade routes." "Excellent," Zexthara said. "Now we can focus on more important matters without their constant interference." Her economic advisor, a younger Zilithian named Texvara, looked worried. "Ma'am, we're getting reports of increased pirate activity in the Rigelian sector. Without human patrols, the raiders are attacking merchant ships." Zexthara waved her hand dismissively. "The local governments can handle some pirates. We cannot be expected to protect every small trading vessel in the galaxy." But these routes carry supplies to dozens of worlds," Texvara continued. "If they're cut off, entire populations could face shortages of food and medicine." "Then they should have built stronger defenses," Zexthara replied. "The humans made these species soft and dependent. Now they will learn to be strong on their own." Meanwhile, Ambassador Vorthak of the Vorthan Empire was in his private chambers, speaking with his military commanders through a secured communication link. The red-eyed alien smiled as he listened to their reports. "The human fleet has withdrawn from the border sectors," General Krickstar reported. "Our intelligence suggests they will not interfere in galactic affairs for the foreseeable future." "Perfect," Vorthak said. "Begin Phase 1 of the expansion plan. Target the Altarian outer colonies first. They have valuable mineral resources and weak defenses." "What if the Council objects?" asked another commander. "The Council has shown they prefer not to get involved in such matters," Vorthak replied. "And without human interference, who is going to stop us? The Zilithians care only about their own territory. The Kethmoran are too old and set in their ways to act quickly." Back on the U's Guardian, Admiral Chris Taylor received another urgent message. This time it was from the Centauri Merchant Guild. Their representative, a small, furry being named Coordinator Ziptel, appeared on the screen looking terrified. "Admiral Taylor, thank goodness I reached you," Ziptel said rapidly. "The Vorthan Empire is moving warships toward our trading posts. Our security forces cannot stand against them. We need human protection." Chris felt his heart breaking. "I'm sorry, Coordinator. We are no longer operating in Council space. You'll have to contact the Galactic Council for help." "We tried," Ziptel sighed, his voice cracking. "They said it was an internal matter between the Vorthan Empire and the Centauri Guild. They will not intervene." "I understand your situation," Chris said carefully. "But my orders are clear. We cannot help." The screen went dark as Ziptel ended the call. Chris stood in silence for a long moment, listening to the emergency signals still coming in over the radio. Ships were being destroyed, people were dying, and entire civilizations were being threatened. "Sir," Commander Walsh said quietly, "this is exactly what we warned them would happen." Chris nodded grimly. "Yes, it is, and it's only been 6 hours." "Lieutenant." Martinez looked up from the station. "Admiral, we're getting reports that the Vorthan Empire has attacked the first Altarian colony. The local defense force was destroyed in minutes. The bridge fell silent except for the constant stream of emergency calls that no one could answer. The galaxy was beginning to tear itself apart, and the humans could only watch from the sidelines. How long do you think it will take them to realize their mistake? Asked Commander Walsh. Chris stared out at the stars. I don't know, but I fear it may be too late by the time they do. Dr. Peter Collins floated in the zero-gravity section of Research Station Delta 7, looking through the large observation window at the star system below. 3 days had passed since the humans left the council, and Peter could already see the changes beginning. Peter was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. For 10 years, he had worked with species from across the galaxy to understand how different forms of life could work together. Now his research was ending, and he was preparing to return to Earth. Dr. Collins, called his assistant, Dr. Nancy Green, from across the laboratory. We're getting reports from the Vega system. The Vorthan Empire has attacked 3 more Altarian colonies. Peter pushed himself away from the window and floated over to Nancy's workstation. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with red marks, appearing in various locations. Each red mark represented a world under attack or in crisis. How many colonies have they taken? Peter asked. 7 so far, Nancy replied. The Altarians are calling for help, but the Council is not responding. They say it's a dispute between 2 member species and they cannot interfere. Peter felt sick. He had friends among the Altarians. They were gentle, artistic people who had never hurt anyone. Their colonies were full of beautiful cities and peaceful farms. Now they were being destroyed by the Vorthan war machine. What about the Kethmoran? Peter asked. They're supposed to be the oldest and wisest species in the galaxy. Nancy brought up another screen. I contacted Dr. Velmaith at the Kethmoran Science Institute. He says their government refuses to get involved. They claim this is the natural order of things, the strong taking from the weak. Peter clenched his fists. Natural order? The Altarians have been peaceful for thousands of years. They never developed weapons because they never needed them. We were supposed to protect them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Commander Susan Wright was shutting down the Galactic Communication Network Control Center. Susan had been in charge of maintaining the communication systems that connected hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. The network allowed instant communication between star systems that were light years apart. Commander, said her chief engineer, a man named Bill Roberts, the Tausetians are asking us to delay the shutdown. They say their entire educational system depends on our network. Susan looked at the massive control panels that covered the walls of the center. Each panel monitored communication links to different sectors of the galaxy. In a few hours, most of them would go dark. I'm sorry, Bill, Susan said. Our orders are to transfer all non-essential operations back to Earth. The Council will have to maintain their own communication systems, but they don't have the technology. Bill protested. It took us 20 years to build this network. Without it, many worlds will be cut off from each other. Susan knew he was right. The humans had built the communication network as a gift to the galaxy. It allowed small worlds to call for help during emergencies, enabled trade between distant systems, and helped different species share knowledge and culture. The Council said they could handle their own problems, Susan said bitterly. Let them figure out how to talk to each other. On the main screen, they could see the communication traffic dropping rapidly as human-maintained systems went offline. Worlds that had been connected for decades were suddenly isolated. In the medical section of the station, Dr. Karen Martinez was packing up her research on the Zebulon plague. The plague was a deadly disease that had been spreading through the outer rim colonies for months. Karen's team had been close to finding a cure. Dr. Martinez, said her research partner, Dr. Mike Johnson, the Zebulon colonies are begging us to stay. The plague is spreading faster now. Without our research, thousands will die. Karen looked at the data on her screen. The plague had already killed over 50,000 people on 12 different worlds. Her team had been working around the clock to develop a cure, and they were So close to success, I know, she said quietly. But we're not allowed to continue council-funded research. Earth Command wants all medical research transferred to Earth facilities. But the cure needs to be tested on the infected populations, Mike said desperately. We can't do that from Earth. These people will die. Karen felt tears in her eyes. She had become a doctor to save lives, not to watch people die because of politics. I know, Mike, I know. Back on the council station, the first emergency session was being called. Ambassador Felthar of the Altarians stood before the council members, his usually calm face showing pure terror. Honored council members, Felthar sighed, his voice shaking. The Vorthan Empire has destroyed 7 of our colonies. They have killed hundreds of thousands of my people. We beg you to intervene. Zexthara looked down at him from her high platform. The council cannot interfere in disputes between member species. You must resolve this matter with the Vorthan Empire directly. Resolve it? Felthar shouted, losing his diplomatic composure. They are using battleships to attack our farming colonies. We have no weapons, no military. How can we resolve this? Ambassador Vorthak spoke from his platform, his red eyes gleaming. The Altarians have valuable resources on worlds they cannot properly defend. It is more efficient for the Vorthan Empire to manage these resources. You mean steal them, Felthar said angrily. You are murdering innocent people to take their homes. The galaxy is governed by strength, Vorthak replied calmly. The weak must serve the strong. This is natural law. Where is the justice in that? Felthar demanded. Where is the protection for peaceful species? The ancient Kethmer spoke for the first time in months. His voice was dry and cold. Justice is a human concept. We survive for millions of years without it. The universe does not care about your feelings. Felthar turned to look at the empty, human section of the chamber. The humans cared, he said quietly. They would have protected us. The humans are gone, Zexthara said. You must adapt to the new reality. Meanwhile, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The Proxima Alliance and the Vegan Confederacy had started fighting over mining rights in the Kepler sector. Without human mediators, the conflict was escalating rapidly. The Centauri Merchant Guild had lost 37 ships to pirates in the last 2 days. Their trade routes were collapsing, and several worlds were already reporting shortages of food. And medicine. The Tau Cetian educational network had gone offline when the human communication systems were shut down. Billions of students across hundreds of worlds could no longer access their lessons or contact their teachers. Environmental monitoring systems that humans had maintained for decades were failing. 3 worlds in the Outer Rim were facing ecological disasters that would have been prevented with early warning systems. In the council chamber, the representatives of smaller species were starting to panic. They had depended on human protection, human technology, and human mediation for so long that they had forgotten how to survive without it. Perhaps, said a small voice from the back of the chamber, we should ask the humans to return. The chamber fell silent. Then Zexthara spoke, her voice sharp with anger. We will not beg the humans for help. We are superior beings. We will solve these problems ourselves. But even as she spoke, more reports of chaos and destruction were arriving. The cascade had begun, and it was moving faster than anyone had expected. The galaxy was learning what it meant to be alone. General Alex Rodriguez stood in the war room deep beneath the Pentagon on Earth, staring at the massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red warning lights blinked across hundreds of star systems. Each light represented a crisis, a war or a disaster that was spreading without human intervention. Sir, said Colonel Jane Brooks, his intelligence officer, the situation is getting worse by the hour. We now have confirmed reports of active warfare in 47 different sectors. Alex studied the display grimly. 1 week had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was tearing itself apart. The Proxima Alliance and the Vegan Confederacy were now in full-scale war. The Hegemony War, as the news was calling it, had already destroyed 6 worlds and displaced Millions of refugees. What about the Vorthan Empire? Alex asked. They've conquered 12 Altarian colonies, Jane reported. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to attack the Altarian homeworld itself. The Altarians have no military capable of stopping them. Alex felt his jaw tighten. He had served as a military advisor to the Galactic Council for 8 years. He had helped train the defense forces of dozens of smaller species. Now he could only watch as those same species were being destroyed. Sir, called Major Tom Stevens from the communications station. We're receiving another priority message from the council station. It's marked urgent. Ignore it, Alex said firmly. We have our orders. No contact with council representatives. But even as he gave the order, Alex knew the message was probably another desperate plea for help. They had been receiving dozens of them every day from species that had once been under human protection. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, Captain Rachel Turner stood on the bridge of the hospital ship USS Mercy, watching streams of refugee ships approaching their position. Rachel had commanded medical missions throughout the galaxy for 6 years. Now she was trying to help as many people as possible before returning to Earth space. Captain, said Dr. Paul Anderson, the ship's chief medical officer, we have over 10,000 refugees on board. Our medical facilities are completely overwhelmed. Rachel looked at the screen showing the endless line of damaged ships waiting for help. Each ship carried families fleeing from war zones, survivors of pirate attacks, and victims of the plagues that were spreading unchecked through the galaxy. How many more ships are coming? She asked. At least 50 more in the next hour, replied Lieutenant Amy White from the navigation station. Most of them are carrying wounded from the Hegemony War. Rachel felt helpless. The Mercy was designed to handle medical emergencies for a few hundred people at a time. Now they were trying to care for thousands, and more kept arriving every hour. Dr. Anderson, she said, do what you can. Save who you can. But remember, we have orders to return to Earth space in 48 hours. 48 hours? Dr. Anderson looked shocked. Captain, these people will die without medical care. We can't just abandon them. We don't have a choice, Rachel said, her voice breaking. The council made it clear they don't want our help. We're not allowed to operate in their territory. Anymore, on the main screen, they could see a small Tau Cetian transport ship approaching. The ship was badly damaged, with parts of its hull blown away. Inside were probably families who had lost everything, looking for safety that the humans could no longer provide. Back on the council station, the situation was becoming desperate. Ambassador Felthar sat in his small office, surrounded by reports from his dying colonies. His hands shook as he read the latest casualty numbers from the Vorthan attacks. Sir, said his aide, a young Altarian named Kelvin, the Vorthan Empire has issued an ultimatum. They demand the surrender of our homeworld. Within 24 hours, Felthar closed his eyes. The Altarian homeworld was home to over 2 billion people. It was a peaceful planet covered with beautiful cities, art museums, and gardens. The idea of Vorthan warships attacking it was beyond horrible. Have you heard anything from the other council members? Felthar asked. The Zilithians say it's not their problem, Kelvin replied. The Kethmoran claim they cannot interfere in natural selection. The smaller species are too frightened to speak up. Felthar stood up and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the massive council station spinning slowly in space. Once, this place had been a symbol of hope and cooperation. Now it felt like a tomb. What about the humans? He asked quietly. They're not responding to any official communications, Kelvin said. But I heard that some human ships are still helping refugees in the Outer Rim. Felthar felt a spark of hope. Can we reach them? I can try, Kelvin said. But it would have to be unofficial. The Council has forbidden any member species from contacting the humans. In another part of the station, Zexthara was meeting with her military advisors. The Zilithian leader was beginning to look worried as she reviewed the latest reports from across the galaxy. The economic situation is becoming serious, reported her trade advisor. Without human protection of the trade routes, commerce between systems has dropped by 60%. Several worlds are facing shortages of basic supplies. And the pirate attacks? Zexthara asked. Increasing daily, her military advisor replied. The raiders know there are no human patrol ships to stop them. They're getting bolder and more violent. Zexthara tried to maintain her confident expression, but inside she was starting to worry. The humans had been involved in so many different operations that no one had realized how much the galaxy depended on them. What about our own forces? She asked. Can we increase patrols? Our ships are designed for defending Zilithian territory, her military advisor explained. We don't have enough vessels to patrol the entire galaxy, and our crews are not trained for humanitarian operations. Meanwhile, deep in the ancient halls of the Kethmoran homeworld, the Council of Elders was meeting for the first time in 50 years. Elder Kethmor sat with his fellow ancient beings, discussing the growing crisis. The young species are panicking, said Elder Velthor, who was over 400 years old. They have forgotten how to survive without constant protection. Perhaps. That is for the best, replied Elder Morthok. The weak should not survive if they cannot defend themselves. But Elder Kethmor was not so sure. He had lived through the last great galactic war, thousands of years ago. He remembered the suffering, the destruction, the billions who had died. He had hoped never to see such chaos again. The humans were maintaining a balance, he said slowly. Without them, the strong will destroy the weak, and eventually the strong will destroy each other. That is the natural order, Elder Morthok insisted. Natural, perhaps, Kethmor replied, but is it wise? As the elders debated, reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy. The Zebulon plague had spread to 8 more worlds. The Centauri. Merchant Guild had declared bankruptcy after losing most of their ships to pirates. 3 small species had already been completely conquered by larger neighbors. The Tausetians, known for their advanced learning and peaceful nature, were preparing to evacuate their homeworld as the Vorthan Empire approached their borders. Their entire civilization, thousands of years of knowledge and culture, was about to be destroyed. In the council chamber, the few remaining representatives of smaller species huddled together, trying to find some solution to the crisis. But, without human mediation, they could not even agree on how to ask for help. We need to contact the humans, whispered Representative Zixtel of the Centauri. They're the only ones who can stop this. The council forbids it, replied Representative Velmuth of the Tausetians. Anyone who contacts the humans will be expelled from the station. Then maybe we should be expelled, Zixtel said desperately. At least then we might survive. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the value of those who protect and serve others. But for many species, the lesson was coming too late. The cascade of destruction was accelerating, and soon there might be nothing left to save. Ambassador Tim Johnson sat alone in his small apartment on the council station, watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. Tim had been the only council member to vote against forcing the humans to leave. Now, 2 weeks after their departure, he took no pleasure in being right. The news was terrible. The Altarian homeworld had fallen to the Vorthan Empire just hours ago. 2 billion peaceful people were now under military occupation. The Tausetian colonies were evacuating as Vorthan. Warships approached their borders. The hegemony war had spread to 15 star systems with no end in sight. Computer, show me the casualty reports, Tim said quietly, the screen filled with numbers that made his heart sink. Over 50 million people dead from wars that could have been prevented. Hundreds of millions more displaced as refugees. Entire civilizations wiping each other out over resources and territory. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. Tim opened it to find Zexthara standing in the hallway. The Zilithian leader looked terrible. Her usually perfect blue skin was pale, and her confident expression had been replaced by something Tim had never seen before. Fear. May I come in? She asked. Tim stepped aside and let her enter. Zexthara walked to the window and stared out at the stars for a long moment before speaking. I need to ask you something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Was I wrong about the humans? Tim looked at her carefully. What do you think? I think... Zexthora paused, struggling with words she had never said before. I think I may have made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Meanwhile, at the Earth Embassy on the far side of the station, Dr. Helen Murphy was working through the night, trying to coordinate emergency aid for the flood of refugees. Helen had been Earth's diplomatic liaison for humanitarian issues. Even though the humans had officially left, she couldn't bring herself to abandon people who needed help. Dr. Murphy, called her assistant, a young man named Steve Parker. We have another emergency call from the Tausetian fleet. They're asking for medical supplies and safe passage to neutral space. Helen looked at the screen showing the Tausetian evacuation fleet, thousands of ships carrying the survivors of an ancient and peaceful civilization. Their homeworld was gone, conquered by the Vorthan Empire. Now they were homeless refugees looking for somewhere safe to land. What can we do for them? She asked. Officially? Nothing, Steve replied. We're not supposed to be involved in council affairs anymore, but D hesitated. But what? Some of the human medical ships are still operating in the Outer Rim. Steve said. Captain Turner on the UHS Mercy says she can try to help, even though it's against orders. Helen made a decision that could end her career. Send them the coordinates. Tell Captain Turner we'll take responsibility. At that moment, Ambassador Vorthak was in his private chambers, speaking with his military commanders. The Vorthan leader should have been celebrating his empire's victories, but something was bothering him. General Krickstar, he said, what is the status of our new conquests? Excellent, sir, the general replied. We now control 17 former Altarian colonies and their homeworld. The Tausetian territories will be ours within days, and the resistance? General Krickstar's expression changed slightly, that is, more difficult than expected, sir. The conquered populations are not cooperating. They refuse to work in our factories or farms. Some are even destroying their own infrastructure rather than let us use it. Vorthak frowned. This did not happen when we conquered other species. In the past, no, sir. In the past, we conquered species that understood the concept of strength ruling over weakness. But these species, they still believe in human ideas about justice and freedom. They would rather die than submit. And our economy? Also problematic, another commander reported. The trade routes we captured are worthless without merchants willing to use them. The pirates have made space travel so dangerous that even our own supply ships are being attacked. Vorthak was beginning to realize that conquest was easier than ruling. The humans had created a galaxy where different species worked together willingly. Without that cooperation, everything was falling apart. In the ancient halls of the Kethmoran homeworld, Elder Kethmar was reading reports that made his centuries of experience seem inadequate. The galaxy was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. Elder, said his aide, a young Kethmoran named Dexavar, the Council of Elders is requesting your presence. They say the situation requires immediate action. Kethmar walked slowly to the council chamber, his old bones aching with each step. Inside, the other elders were arguing loudly, something that had not happened in over 1,000 years. We must intervene, Elder Velther was saying. The younger species are destroying themselves and taking the galaxy with them. It is not our place, Elder Morthic replied stubbornly. We have survived by staying out of such conflicts. Kethmar raised his hand for silence. I have been thinking about the humans, he said slowly. For 12 years they did something we had forgotten how to do. What is that? Asked Elder Velther. They cared about others more than themselves, Kethmar replied. They risked their own safety to protect the weak. They spent their resources to help species that could give them nothing in return. They chose cooperation over conquest. Human weakness, Elder Morthak muttered. No, Kethmar said firmly. Human strength. And we threw it away because we were too proud to admit that these young beings might have something to teach us. Back on the council station, an emergency session was being called. The chamber was fuller than it had been in years, but not with the usual confident voices of the major powers. Instead, representatives of smaller species packed the galleries. Their faces showing desperation and fear, Zexthara stood at her platform looking out at the crowd. For the first time in her political career, she was not sure what to say. The council recognizes the need to address the current difficulties, she began carefully. Difficulties? Shouted Representative Zixtal of the Centauri. Our entire merchant fleet has been destroyed. Our trade network is gone. Our people are starving. The Tausetian civilization has been erased from history, cried Representative Velmuth. Thousands of years of culture and knowledge, gone forever. My people are in refugee camps, begging for food, added Representative Felthar of the Altarians. The chamber erupted in angry voices as dozens of species demanded answers. But Zexthara had no answers to give. The Zilithians were strong enough to protect their own territory, but they had never learned how to help others. Perhaps, said a small voice from the back of the chamber, we should contact the humans. The chamber fell silent. The speaker was Representative Killinger, from a tiny species called the Blix. They were so small and insignificant that most council members had forgotten they existed. The humans would know what to do, Killinger continued. They always knew how to stop wars and help people. We cannot ask the humans for help, Zexthara said, but her voice lacked conviction. We told them to leave. Then maybe we should tell them we were wrong? Killinger replied simply. The words hung in the air like a challenge. For several long minutes, no one spoke. Finally, Elder Kethmar's voice came over the communication system from his homeworld. The young Blix speaks wisdom, the ancient being said. Pride has cost us enough. It is time to swallow our pride and admit our mistake. But even as the council debated, more reports of disaster were coming in. The Zebulon plague had mutated and was spreading faster than ever. 2 more species had been completely conquered. The galactic economy was in free fall. Time was running out, and everyone knew it. The question was whether they could overcome their pride in time to save what was left of galactic civilization. The galaxy was finally learning the true value of those who served others. But the lesson was coming at a terrible price. President Kevin Brooks stood at the podium in the United Earth Assembly, looking out at the representatives from every human nation. Behind him, a massive screen showed the formal communications that had been flooding in from the Galactic Council for the past 3 days. Apologies, pleas for help, and offers that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Fellow humans, Kevin began, his voice heavy with sadness. 3 weeks ago, the Galactic Council told us we were not wanted. They said the galaxy could survive without human interference. Today, they are begging us to return. He gestured to the screen behind him. The Council is offering us everything we asked for during our 12 years of membership. Full voting rights on all issues. Leadership positions in their military and humanitarian organizations. Recognition as a first-tier species with equal status to the Zilithians and Vorthan Empire. A murmur went through the assembly. These were concessions the humans had been requesting for years, always denied. They are also offering us control of galactic trade route security, complete authority over humanitarian missions, and unlimited access to their scientific databases, Kevin continued. In short, they are offering us more power than any species has ever held in the galaxy. Representative Carol Davis from the European Federation raised her hand. Mr. President, what is the cost of their pride? Kevin's expression grew even more grave. The cost has been measured in lives, Carol, in the 3 weeks since we left. Over 100 million beings have died in wars that could have been prevented. 15 entire species have been conquered or destroyed. The Tausetian civilization, which existed for over 5,000 years, is gone forever. The assembly fell silent. Representative John Wilson from the Pacific Alliance spoke up. What? About the refugees? Over 3 billion beings are now homeless, Kevin replied. They are living in refugee camps or crowded onto ships with nowhere to go. The Altarian homeworld, once called the most beautiful planet in the galaxy, is now a military base for the Vorthan Empire. Meanwhile, Captain Nathan Pierce was leading a small fleet of human ships toward the Council territories. Nathan had been chosen to command humanity's response to the crisis. His orders were limited but clear: save who they could, but make no commitments about rejoining the Council. "Captain," called Commander Lisa Ford from the communications station, "we're receiving transmissions from refugee ships throughout this sector. There are thousands of them." Nathan looked at the screen showing the scattered points of light that represented ships full of desperate families. Each ship carried people who had lost their homes, their worlds, sometimes their entire civilizations. "How many can we help?" he asked. "Our 6 ships can carry maybe 10,000 refugees total," replied his second-in-command, Major Ryan Kelly. "But there are over 1 million people in this sector alone who need evacuation." Nathan felt the weight of impossible choices. "Do what we can, save who we can." On the Council station, Zexthara was meeting with what remained of the Galactic leadership. The chamber that had once been filled with confident alien leaders now felt empty and broken. Many species no longer had representatives because their governments had collapsed. "The humans have responded to our communications," reported Ambassador Tim Johnson, who had become an unofficial mediator. "President Brooks will address the Council in 1 hour." "What do you think they will say?" asked Ambassador Falthar. The Altarian looked much older than he had just weeks ago. The destruction of his people had aged him terribly. "I think they will help," Tim replied, "but not because we asked. They will help because people are suffering." Elder Kethmur appeared on the main screen, calling in from his homeworld. The ancient being looked tired beyond his centuries. "The humans are better than we deserved," he said slowly. "We pushed them away when we needed them most." At that moment, President Brooks appeared on the communication screen. The assembly chamber fell silent as he began to speak. "Members of the Galactic Council," Kevin said, his voice formal but not unkind, "humanity has received your communications. We have heard your apologies and considered your offers." He paused for a moment, looking directly at each of the alien leaders. 3 weeks ago, you told us that the galaxy did not need human interference. You said our compassion was weakness and our protection was unnecessary. You were confident that the superior alien races could handle any problems that arose. The silence in the chamber was complete. "You were wrong," Kevin continued. "In 3 weeks, the galaxy has suffered more death and destruction than it had seen in decades. Species that had lived in peace for thousands of years have been wiped out. Civilizations that could have contributed beauty and knowledge to the galaxy are gone forever." Zexthara spoke up, her voice barely audible. "President Brooks, we made a mistake. We were wrong about humanity. We need your help." Kevin's expression softened slightly. "Yes, you do need our help. And because we are human, we will give it. Not because you asked, but because people are suffering and dying while we speak." Relief flooded through the chamber, but Kevin was not finished. "However," he continued, "things will be different this time. Humanity will return to the galaxy, but on our terms. We will establish our own humanitarian zones where any species can seek refuge. We will patrol trade routes and protect peaceful worlds, but we will answer to Earth, not to the Council." "We accept any terms," Zexthara said desperately. "The Council will be restructured," Kevin announced. "Every species, no matter how small, will have an equal voice. Decisions will be made by cooperation, not by the dominance of the strong over the weak. And any species that attempts conquest or oppression will face the full response of the human fleet." Ambassador Vorthak, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "And if the Vorthan Empire does not accept these terms?" Kevin's voice became hard as steel. "Then the Vorthan Empire will discover what happens when humans are not trying to be diplomatic." The threat hung in the air. Everyone knew that humanity had been holding back during their years in the Council, trying to work within the system. Now they were offering to help rebuild, but they were also making it clear that they would not tolerate any more aggression. Over the following months, human ships spread across the galaxy once again. Captain Jennifer Clark, commanding the rebuilt Council Station watched as memorial beacons were launched into space. Each beacon represented a species or civilization that had been lost during the 3 weeks of chaos. The Tau Setians were gone forever. The Altarian homeworld would take generations to recover. Dozens of smaller species had been scattered to the winds, their cultures destroyed. The galactic economy was in ruins, and trust between species would take years to rebuild. "Admiral," said her aide, Lieutenant Mark Thompson, "the new council session is about to begin." Jennifer walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was slowly healing, but the scars would remain forever. Humanity had returned, but they had returned to a broken and diminished galaxy. In the new council chamber, representatives from hundreds of species sat as equals. The Zilithians and other major powers no longer dominated the proceedings. Humans served as mediators and peacekeepers, but they also made sure that every voice was heard. "The council will come to order," announced the new council president, a human diplomat named Robert Clark. "Our first item of business is the memorial resolution for the species we lost." As the names of the extinct civilizations were read aloud, Jennifer thought about the cost of pride and prejudice. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but the price had been terrible. Humanity had returned to the stars, but they had returned to a galaxy that would never be the same. Some lessons, once learned, could never be unlearned. And some losses could never be recovered. The galaxy would remember what happened when good people were pushed away. It would remember the cost of believing. That strength mattered more than compassion, and it would never make that mistake again.